Hello, my name is Zizi, and today I'm going to be going scene by scene in the movie Obsession, talking about how the script differs from the movie. Obviously, to start, I'd like to say I will be spoiling essentially everything in the movie, and I will be going into great detail about how the script differs from the movie. I'm assuming, since you clicked on this video, that you have already watched the movie, so I will not be explaining exactly what's happening in these scenes, purely what is different between the movie and the script. Starting off, the first 20 minutes of the movie is essentially laid out completely differently in the script compared to the movie. The script actually starts off with Sandy's death, the cat, instead of Bear coming home to Sandy dying after the conversation with Ian. And in this opening scene, we see Bear watching a romance film and kind of just daydreaming about it. This scene honestly just kind of makes me hate him immediately in the script, because the script lays out that Sandy's been dead for a while and that the smell is starting to emit from Sandy, and yet he does nothing to clean it, just watching this romance movie, completely ignoring Sandy. As for the cat's cause of death, it's basically laid out exactly the same. It was the sleeping pills. They never mentioned if he intentionally left them open or anything. They were just open, and Sandy got into them.
Hello, it's actually editing Zach here. I just wanted to say his grandma is actually not even present in the script one bit. He is not living in his grandma's house, and it is not his grandma's sleeping pills. It is just pills that Bear has, presumably sleeping pills like the movie is, but it doesn't make it very clear.
In the script, there's one difference where when he puts the pills back, he actually tries to force a smile, and it's kind of supposed to be the first creepy moment of the film. But in the movie, he kind of just looks at himself, and it has the whole broken, medicine cabinet thing. So it's a little bit different in the script, but not too different. After he cleans up Sandy in the script, that's actually when Nikki calls him. So he is in the living room cleaning up Sandy, and then he gets a call and runs over there and misses it, and Nikki actually leaves a voicemail, and on this voicemail is where she drops her crystal necklace down the drain or whatever. So this is a little bit different. It doesn't happen on the call with her, but right after he hears this voicemail, he immediately calls her back, and then they have a similar-ish conversation with a couple of key differences. Notably, in the script version, she does not mention anywhere that she's going to be quitting, and she also really stresses about how hard of a day she's had, and she seems a little bit more sad and kind of angry in the script as compared to the movie. In the movie, she was more, kind of just thinking what life would be like after she quit this job, but in this script, she seems genuinely upset, so that's a big difference. Also, in the script version, there's no mention of time or anything, or her asking him, Bear, how his day was or anything like that, but there is the first mention of Ian here, where basically Bear offers to pick her up early for trivia, and she declines, saying that Ian is already doing that, and there's supposedly something going on between them because Bear looks up and is disappointed and sad. And then after this is when we get the scene of him crying on the bed, so it's more directly connected to Nikki instead of a little bit ambiguous like it is in the movie. After this phone call in the script, we actually get the magic shop scene where he gets the One Wish Willow. A couple things here that are a little kind of small but different in the script compared to the movie. Viola, the magic shop employee, I'm not sure if that's her name in the movie, but it is in the script, so I'll be saying her name as that in the script, is not talking to anyone on the phone on her earbuds or whatever, so that's a little bit different. The scene where he is looking at the crystal necklaces with Viola is a little bit different. It basically plays out the same, but when he picks up the Sunshine in a Rock that Viola recommends to him, he doesn't remark that Nikki would hate this. He only remarks that Nikki would love the One Wish Willow. During the checkout scene, this scene is actually much longer in the script than it is in the movie. It's kind of succinct in the movie, but in the script they banter for quite a while, honestly. There's some extra fourth wall breaking in the script where basically Bear mentions oh, I bet you guys just got these mysteriously. They just showed up in the shop and you don't know what they are. And then she's like, no, we know what they are. They're just an 80s thing, Kind of like how she said in the movie, but a lot more kind of playing into the cliches and then breaking them. Then after he buys, the One Wish Willow and has a similar conversation about the whole people come back complaining, that's still there. There's comedic banter between them where she says some stupid jokes about oh, I don't know, wish jokes, and then he says some stupid jokes. And then at the end he like calls for her to get a raise or something like that. It's very strange. Definitely not needed, so I see why they cut this out for sure. After the magic shop scene, we finally get the conversation that takes place at the beginning of the movie, except this time it's while Bear's driving as he's on his way to trivia night, and Ian is on the phone. Overall, the conversation plays out mostly the same. The sentiment is overall very similar, except there are a few key differences here. Initially, there's not the whole long monologue. It's kind of starts with a monologue, but then Ian kind of interrupts him because Bear mentions that him and Nikki have the same music taste, and he makes fun of him for that. So that's a little funny line in there, but not the whole monologue, just a little small monologue here. We also get much more context into Nikki and Bear's past here, because multiple times a history is actually brought up, not in terms of relationships or, flings or dating or anything like that, just that they've known each other for 6 years, ever since marching band, and Ian thinks that he should totally cut all of that out, saying that it would freak her out. Bear also mentions to Ian here that he got Nikki something, and then obviously Ian immediately calls it off. Ian here is also a lot more clear that he doesn't want Bear to say anything to her at all because it would ruin the friendship dynamics or anything like that. So a little bit more evidence to show that Ian might have ulterior motives already. Here, I think Ian saying, we all did fine for a while, is actually kind of a great line. And I see why they cut it, but I think it would have been great in the movie because, I don't know, I think it really gives context to them as an entire friend group. And it kind of adds more weight to everyone eventually dying or wishing they were dead later. I think overall, every scene with Ian, especially at this beginning part, the movie makes it a lot more subtle that he's trying to intentionally maybe sabotage Bear here, but in the script it is not subtle at all, it is very clear. After the car conversation comes the trivia scene, and this scene is very, very different from the movie. To start off, the conversation between Nikki and Sarah, where they're talking in the movie about Nikki writing while on the job, is completely changed to basically just Nikki complaining about customers the entire time. There are a couple more hints of possibly Ian and Nikki having something because as Nikki's kind of complaining about this customer, it is mentioned that Ian rests his hands on her shoulder kind of in a I'm sorry you had to deal with that kind of way, kind of insinuating that they might be closer than, what is led to believe. In the script, we actually see Sarah ask Bear about how his day was instead of Nikki while they're at the bar. I should also mention that this entire scene takes place in a booth at trivia night, not at the bar, not while they're getting shots. After Sarah asks Bear about how his day was, he keeps getting interrupted. It's honestly like extremely rude. Nikki does it, Ian does it, I think even Sarah does it, even after asking him. So they really make him kind of pitiful in the script, but he keeps getting interrupted, and one of these times he gets interrupted, it's when Ian brings up the gun that's in the backroom safe. And I think there's kind of hilarious foreshadowing here, because Sarah mentions that, if my dad found out that you found this gun, then he'd shoot you and kill you with it. And I'm just like... After Ian brings up the gun, there's a scene that's been completely cut from the movie where basically Nikki and Sarah actually start to argue and get angry at each other. Sarah because she wants to advocate for having a gun to keep you safe, and then Nikki for being completely against guns as a concept entirely. And it actually escalates to the point where Nikki gets so mad that she leaves the table to go pee. So definitely already introducing some conflict between the two in the script. I should mention throughout this entire time, all of this conversation is taking place off screen, similar to how they do in the movie where they're just showing Bear and they're pushing up on him. But this entire conversation probably lasted for multiple minutes, is just one shot of them pushing it on Bear. So we don't know what Nikki, we don't know what Ian, and we don't know what Sarah looks like up until we cut to Sarah after Nikki leaves, and it says in the script that Sarah is rocking a beer mustache, so kind of interesting little tidbit there. After Nikki gets up to leave, we see Sarah kind of getting angry at Ian for even bringing up the gun. And after this, Ian actually reveals something that's kind of strange. He reveals that obviously Nikki's had a bad day, like we heard on the phone call in the script. And she was even in the back in the break room crying. And I think this is kind of to give maybe some leeway for the wish later, so that when she starts acting a little bit different, maybe it makes it a little bit like make more sense for the other characters while they're in the script. I can't really say that this point got across in the movie, but I feel like it didn't need to get across. So kind of a little bit of a different messaging here with Ian mentioning Nikki crying while at work. Sarah, after she finds out that Nikki was crying, actually gets very rude and says maybe it's because no one wants to read her dumb novel. So again, Sarah and Nikki honestly like hate each other in this script. It's kind of crazy. After Sarah brings up the whole dumb novel thing, Ian actually brings up the entire art school thing, but calls it tattoo school. It's kind of a funny line. I like that line for sure.
Nikki actually has this tattoo line in the movie. I'm rewatching it as I'm editing this, so be prepared for more kind of interjections like this from the editor. But yes, Nikki has the tattoo line, so not given to Ian, but actually given to Nikki.
After this, Bear then actually straight up insinuates to Ian, like, oh, so should I not tell her? And then Sarah gets all defensive, asking like, oh, what do you want to tell her? What do you want to tell her? So here's kind of where you can see that Sarah might have something for Bear. And also it's kind of weird that like he was just so open with it during this whole kind of interaction of like, oh, should I tell her now or not? Nikki actually comes back and does the whole like, tell me what, behind Ian's back, and actually scares him. So first sign of a scary Nikki here, I guess. After she comes back, she actually insults Sarah for having like a beer mustache. So already more malice between these two. These people are just going at each other's necks this entire beginning of the movie in the script. Then after Nikki insults Sarah, that's when Nikki actually asks Bear about how his day was. And then the whole same sort of thing that happens in the movie where the trivia announcer comes on and interrupts him happens. Except in the script, he actually manages to talk over the trivia announcer and mentions about how Sandy died, and how it was like, you know, kind of like depressing. And he even tells them how Sandy died too. So a little bit of a Bear growth moment in the script compared to the movie where he doesn't tell them anything. And then after this, a very interesting thing happens where instead of Sarah being the one to give him that long hug, it's actually Nikki being the one to give him that long hug. And she even kisses him on the cheek, kind of like longingly. So in the script, it very much lays out like this would confuse any person if they did this. So very much insinuating that Nikki, despite having things with Ian, might also kind of like Bear here too, more than anything I think that happens in the movie. While this is all going on, the Nikki hugging and kissing Bear, we have the announcer asking trivia questions about other stories with wishes being tied to them, such as Aladdin or 3 coins in a fountain. The announcer makes a mistake here by saying that the fountain from 3 coins in a fountain is in New York City, when that's actually false. The fountain in 3 coins in a fountain is actually in Rome. So that's a fact that people often get mixed up about the story. After the whole trivia night scene, we get the same parking lot scene. And this scene is very similar. There's still the beats of Sarah maybe liking him, and Ian and Nikki kind of flirting a little bit, and the whole Greedo's going to the bar and not wanting to go there. That's all there, except one thing that is very obviously missing is the scene where Nikki gives the $20 bill to the homeless person. While Bear is dropping Nikki off, it starts off fairly similarly about how Nikki is apologizing for the cat and Bear is saying it's okay, but it's actually not. Except I don't like how in the script it actually does just straight up tell you Nikki is wasted. It just straight up tells you that. Nikki, in the middle of this cat conversation, then starts to mention about how she doesn't like how Ian makes everyone drink so much. And after this line, I think Bear says probably one of the creepiest things that anyone says in the entire movie, basically about if you force people to do something that they might not like, they might learn that they'd actually like it. So super bad behavior here already by Bear. So definitely a strange thing to say at that moment. Some things are changed about the order. Bear actually reveals that he has a gift for Nikki much earlier in the conversation. And then Nikki actually reveals that she's quitting here instead of on the phone. Also missing from the movie is a section where Nikki mentions like getting ready for work tomorrow, like, oh, so bad today, it's gonna be bad tomorrow too. And there's a whole kind of interaction between Bear and Nikki where they're kind of making fun of customers, and it's supposed to be kind of flirtatious, and they're supposed to be kind of like getting along with each other humor-wise here. They also mention here more history where they're saying like, God, I hope we weren't that annoying when we were in band together, basically. Nikki and Bear then have basically the same conversation about love versus romance, except there's an entire monologue by Nikki cut out here, where basically she kind of explains how she doesn't believe in romance and how love like comes with a lot of ugliness and a lot of good and a lot of bad, and that the story that she's writing kind of dives into that aspect of love instead of the romance part of love. And then Bear actually kind of like agrees with her on this and says that love has been overpromised. And apparently Nikki kind of like likes that. Like she's very kind of impressed by his emotional maturity here. It's then kind of heavily implied that Nikki might have some feelings for Bear, because after she brings up the entire like, you know, you're the only person I can talk to about this, Bear actually kind of like says like, well, what do you mean? And then she like, it says she looks at him wanting to say more. So lots more hints being given that she does have some sort of feelings for Bear, and he just completely dropped the ball. When he's dropping her off and calls her Freaky Nikki, she does not ask him if he likes her. That is completely movie original. She still gets mad in the script about being called Freaky Nikki, but she doesn't like do the whole stopping and being like, Bear, do you like me? You should tell me this right now. That is completely movie original. Then after Bear makes the wish, it's a little bit different how she kind of walks out on the porch, because she immediately appears on the porch, kind of how she does in the movie. But then she kind of pulls like that one meme where that one dude goes like Nikki talking to Bear post-wish goes fairly similarly. There's some blocking things and a couple things cut that I'll talk about here. One big thing to note is here in this entire scene, she actually doesn't break free from the wish for like that 1 second she does in the movie. She is completely under the wish the entire time. They make it a little bit more like ambiguous about like if she actually wants it or not, all that stuff, kind of how it is in the movie, but it's like completely ambiguous here. There's not like two people that break free like how it kind of is in the movie. Another thing to note is she kind of actually goes back and forth depending on what Bear says about like if she's actually drunk or not. So at first, you know, he says, I think you're drunk. She's like, no, I'm not drunk at all. And then he says it again, and then she actually kind of goes back to like, oh, yeah, I must be kind of wasted. Kind of like how she does in the movie, but it's more like that's another example of like her kind of mimicking his actions like she does in the movie. Kind of like how she does with the cat, too, which is also present in the script. Then she does like the whole arm cross thing at the passenger window instead of going over to his side of the car where she tries to like unbuckle a seatbelt. She doesn't try to do that at all in the script. After she gets in the car, she then uses the same kind of dad dying excuse, but she actually goes into more detail in the script, basically saying that he has leukemia and that her mom called her about this, and even kind of implies that the real Nikki might feel a little bit of guilt, even if the dad actually doesn't have cancer, because there's an entire section where she's kind of like crying in Bear's lap in this car, kind of about like how she feels bad for never visiting him and kind of other reasons why she feels bad beyond just the cancer. So I kind of like this section in the script because it kind of goes to show like these people are way more blended than instead of just two completely different people. It's just someone being forcefully controlled to feel a certain way. Because there's moments where you actually kind of think like maybe she kind of does feel bad for not being super close to her dad, the real Nikki. One thing about this scene too is Bear actually offers to pay for her entire trip to go see her dad if she would want to do that, and she of course declines here. So very interesting to note. Then going back to Bear's place basically plays out literally exactly the same. There's just one small difference where instead of her remarking that the house is bigger than his last place, she remarks that it's actually smaller than his last place. So the bedroom scene where they have their first kiss and everything also plays out fairly similarly. When she leans her head on him, there's actually a moment where he puts his arm around her, so that's a little bit different. And then one thing is when she's about to kiss him and says, sorry for your cat, there's actually a little note that she's crying slightly. Not like the whole full-blown crying, kind of more so like a normal reaction to hearing really sad news. So kind of maybe, again, blending the two people. While they're sleeping after she freaks out, something that's cut in the script but actually put in again later is he doesn't go to school Reddit about the One Wish Willow. He actually does go to the bathroom in the script. So kind of funny thing here where in the movie he's lying about going to the bathroom, but in the script he's not lying about going to the bathroom. So the cat memorial scene in the script is actually extremely interesting because in the script it's actually a lot more human. Instead of just like taking the cat out and like putting all the roses and all the pictures and stuff around it, she still takes the cat out and puts roses around it, but it's more so out of like disappointment in Bear instead of like wanting to like help him move on past the cat. Basically, he walks up and he's like, what the hell's going on? And she says like, oh, I found the cat in the trash. That's like kind of a shitty thing to do. Why did you put it in the trash? So I figured that like I'd put it out here so you could actually say goodbye and like say goodbye to your cat. What are you doing? Come on. Like, this is so rude to your cat. So it reads very differently in the script, where she's basically kind of scolding him for treating his cat so shittily. So definitely very different from the movie. Although I do think I prefer the movie version because it's showing that Bear is kind of aware of these weird things that's going on and decides not to do anything about it. After Sandy's mural scene, there is a quick scene before they enter the music shop where they are actually shown, both Bear and Nikki, in the parking lot walking into the music shop. And in this scene, Nikki actually tries to grab Bear's hand, but then Bear declines it and says, like, not right now, basically. And in this scene, Nikki's actually completely okay with it. As they walk in, the same Karen dialogue that we hear in the background of the movie is a little bit different in the script. The word Karen is brought up, but Nikki doesn't really like get mad at him for saying Karen. She just kind of just like is like, no, I don't understand what the problem is, basically. So not as important there. As for Ian and Bear's conversation in the break room, basically exactly the same as it is in the movie. The blocking is a little bit different, where like Nikki's looking through the window instead of just looking through like a doorway at them. So there's a little bit of different blocking, but other than that, the exact same. After that conversation, however, that is actually where the Reddit scene takes place. So Ian goes and he actually starts talking to Nikki about last night or whatever, and then this scene in the movie is like when Bear walks to the register and then we see Nikki looking at him. But instead, in the script, what happens is he goes to the register and actually uses the main computer to search up information about the One Wish Willow, where he finds basically the same information on Reddit, except he also finds this one little tidbit where people were talking about how the One Wish Willow actually never existed, and that it's just a complete Mandela effect. So that was kind of cut from the movie. I'm kind of glad they cut that from the movie because it keeps the lore more like tight. So yeah, there's a couple things cut there, but that's where the Reddit scene takes place. While everyone's leaving the shop after their work day, in the script, the only difference is Nikki actually did want to go home with Bear here. She didn't just get her bag or whatever like she did in the movie. She actually did want to go home with Bear and was getting in the car before Bear said no, and Ian offered to drive her. While at home, as Bear is looking up like the side effects for Molly, seeing if Nikki was on it, he's actually not on the phone with Ian. He's kind of just doing it on his own, actually folding laundry during it. And then Nikki comes to the house the same as normal. Nikki's confession, other than one big thing, plays out exactly the same. Basically the same order, the same words, same structure, everything. However, there is one big difference. Before Nikki says, like, I know you like me, before she says that, she actually has kind of a moment where she might break through, because as she's talking, she just all of a sudden stops, turns around, and just starts laughing for like a couple seconds, and then turns back around and says, I know you like me. So definitely a moment where maybe she was just nervous, but definitely kind of ambiguous there. For the montage sequence, in the movie, they show them kissing, and actually in the script, she kind of has another like breaking free moment just for a second. And it almost feels like extremely unnecessary in the script because she's already done it so many times already to this point, and I think that's probably why they cut it, is because like, okay, the audience gets it by now, you know. But I would like to say that. And then in the script, like I said, basically everything plays out the same, except there is no AI picture in the script. So that is a movie only thing, and I think they probably added it because maybe the script was written before generative AI became such a big problem. But then while they were on set, they maybe had that idea. So just a little interesting note there. At the beginning of the restaurant scene, the dialogue is actually the same as it is in the movie, but it's a little bit extended beforehand, and it's more clear that they're actually talking about the first time they met. But in the movie, it's the same dialogue with the whole like, I would join your band thing, and they start laughing with each other. It's a little bit extended on the backside too, where they both kind of mention the idea of like, oh, we should still start a band, you know, just not pointless dialogue, but like, you know, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So I can see why they cut this part out.
Quick little side note here. Bear actually doesn't ask Nikki about her dad in the script. That is completely movie original.
While they're talking about Bear's future and, you know, the food critic part, there's one thing that was cut out, and it's actually Nikki saying Bear's full name, Baron Bailey, which is actually why he says 3-Bite Bailey, you know, because his last name is Bailey. So you can kind of assume that from the movie, but I think it's interesting that we actually know his like full name in the script. Also, while Bear's talking about his future and the food critic stuff, he does mention how many kids he wants too. So Nikki doesn't like dive too far into that, but just, you know, something to know. After Bear and Nikki do their whole like, oh, how good is this bread? And then he does the whole, you know, licking it in the butter and all that. Nikki has a few cut lines where she gets like almost like really sexual, going like, oh, I don't have the money, you know, I could pay you in other ways, things like that. So there's a couple cut lines there. The conversation between Bear and Ian on the phone plays out basically exactly the same, just a couple lines slightly switched, but otherwise it's the exact same. During the tiger's eye scene where Nikki gives Bear the tiger's eye, there's a couple cut lines that I actually find really interesting, where basically when Bear asks like, why are you giving this to me, she doesn't respond with very famous like, I love you so much. She doesn't respond to it with that. She just responds with, you're important to me, and I feel like you needed it because I needed it after my dad left. So kind of more context into Nikki's past here, actually. Bear then, after the revelation that her dad left, asks her, like, do you love me? And he doesn't get super specific with the line like he does in the movie. That is one of my favorite lines in the movie, where he asks specifically, do you love me more than anyone? Because that means that the wish is truly taking control of her. So I don't love this part in the script, especially since she responds like, oh yeah, I'd be sad without you. You know, it's kind of like, it's a lot less intense in the script almost. And I do love how he asks specific questions in the movie, or was so specific with his wording in the movie. The sexual assault scene that happens right after the restaurant scene is actually somehow even worse in the script, because what happens is Nikki actually breaks through of the wish during the sex, or like right before the sex. And instead of him freaking out or doing anything, he kind of just waits it out. So he's fully aware of the wish. He's fully aware real Nikki does not want any of this. And he is also aware that the wish will take effect again in a little bit. So he kind of just has this stonewall face saying like, basically like, yeah, I was going to wait because wish Nikki will come back eventually. And it's really, really messed up. More so than it is in the movie somehow. The famous night scene now has some small and major differences compared to the movie. First of all, for one of the small differences, she's actually completely naked in the script, except for the coat, Bear's coat, that she has on.
Rewatching the movie, I'm actually realizing she is naked, except for the coat. I guess I'm blind. I got glasses, bro. I don't know. Maybe my glasses need to be upgraded, my prescription. I'm too blind for this shit.
In the script, she actually doesn't mention dreams or anything. I don't like my dreams. Or she doesn't even mention how she feels like she loves him more than he loves her. And it's not mutual or whatever. She just is watching him and then is like, go back to sleep, all that stuff. And then after this, she doesn't do the loud, why don't you love me? Instead, as she does in a normal voice, she says, make a deal with me. After saying this, instead of the plant being in front of her face, she actually has a sharp crystal necklace in her hand and starts using it to carve Bear's body. And Bear obviously reacts like, what the hell are you doing? Where Nikki responds, love necklace. So it's kind of like her trying to make him love her again by carving this love necklace into his skin. After carving him, she like leaves the bed and goes back to her side essentially. And as she's doing this, she's kind of like walking, and then she kind of like stops mid-walk and then gets back in bed. So she is doing these erratic behaviors still. It's different in the script than it is in the movie. So after that night, we have probably the most changed section of the entire movie versus script comparison. The entire scene where they're talking about the night before, they're talking about his hair being cut, they're talking about how she was acting last night, the duct tape scene, her cooking lunch for him, her creepy smile, trying to act more human. All of it is not in the script. Basically, all that happens is after that night, it immediately cuts to them at the door, and Bear basically says, okay, bye. She does the same, like, oh, I'm gonna miss you so much. And then she does the same peeing on the ground like she does in the movie. But multiple plot points is not in the script at all. The Sarah and Bear scene where he does eat the cat sandwich, other than the fact that the cat sandwich is not there, is essentially completely unchanged. There's the entire her getting rejected and her dad saying, well, you at least got Luther. All of that is the exact same. The scene where Bear is driving Ian home plays out mostly similarly. There are some extra lines here that I do find interesting, however. At multiple points in the conversation, Ian is much more adamant about Bear actually like fully leaving Nikki. He always says like, oh, just leave her for a week, see if she still likes you and stuff like that. Which isn't really present in the movie. Obviously, maybe insinuating in the movie, but in the script, he's much more like, yeah, you just gotta leave her for a week. Like, you gotta just leave her be, you know? So that's a little interesting. Another line, too, that Bear says is, he actually says to Ian that these past few weeks is the happiest he's ever been. So, who knows if he's actually telling the truth or not. If he is, I feel like that's even darker than the movie, but if he's not, then obviously, you know, it's hard to tell sometimes. So here, Ian actually shows a little bit more care about Nikki, even, where, you know, in the whole like movie, him saying like, oh, I think you're taking advantage, or I say it with love, I say it with love. After that, he kind of says like, I don't want her to get hurt either, along with you. So Ian is a little bit more considerate in the script. It very much feels overall like Ian actually likes Nikki a lot more in the script than he does in the movie. After that conversation and Bear returns home, the entire scene between Bear and the tabby cat kind of like customer service line doesn't happen in the script. Bear walking in and seeing what Nikki did with the whole, you know, human fluids on the ground basically plays out exactly the same. There's a moment where Bear actually asks Nikki if she had a seizure.
This also happens in the movie. I guess I'm blind and deaf now.
And then what Bear is kind of like confronting her about in the script compared to the movie is, instead of the whole cat sandwich thing, he's standing by the shower kind of confronting her, being like, you can't stand in front of the door all day. What are you doing? Did you really just do that all day? So he's kind of more pissed about that instead of the cat thing. And then how the boys' night is brought up is also slightly different compared to the scripts like it is in the movie. She actually doesn't like get mad and immediately shut up the shower off right after Bear mentions that it's a boys' night. She kind of doesn't even react to it, actually, because she's pretty calm. Only after the fact that Bear actually brings up that he's like, oh, I think Ian uninvited Sarah. That's when she gets mad and does her like inhuman scream. After this, there's an entire cut conversation actually between Nikki and Sarah. And this conversation is weird because obviously throughout the script, Nikki and Sarah kind of hate each other. So Nikki calls Sarah, asks if, you know, she's going to Ian's thing. And then Sarah asks Nikki, oh yes, are you already here? And then Nikki responds to her basically saying like, no, I'm not. I'm here. And then Sarah's like, what? And then Nikki's like, oh, I'll just see you later. You know, so definitely, I honestly really like that line, but I see why they cut it for sure. I think it's a very interesting line, but doesn't fit how the movie did it. And then it kind of ends the same way with her freaking out, like, if you wanted me to go, you'd invite me. And him being like, no, you should come, you should come. Ends the exact same way. The party scene at Ian's house has some extended stuff before what happens in the movie. Some weird like comedy things where like Ian calls him like a nickname, codependent. I don't know. It's some codependent like joke thing. It's really not that important before it leads into exactly how the party scene goes. Up until actually there's a cut line when the party goer kind of switches spots with Bear. The cut line here is actually Nikki, when they're switching spots, kind of holding onto his hand like she does in the movie, but then says like, please don't go. And this is interesting because it's something that I kind of want to bring up now for what happens throughout the entire script, where this line specifically has like a childish indicator on it. And after, like, I don't think this happens at all pre-Wish Nikki, but especially post-Wish Nikki, this childish kind of like indication is on a lot of her lines. It's on a ton of her lines. It's like 50% of them. And I think this is something that the movie like definitely shows, but like it doesn't make it like super clear. I think there's some moments where Nikki definitely like acts a little bit more childish in the movie. But I definitely do think that it's like kind of like a social commentary on how like, you know, Nikki trying to be this extremely attractive person for Bear is kind of like infantilizing herself. And it's kind of maybe like a social commentary on how like society views women only as really attractive whenever they make themselves act so childish. So that's a whole nother thing. I have another video coming out soon diving into the deep meanings of this entire story. So if you'd like to hear more stuff about that, I'd recommend keeping around so you could hear more about these deep dives into these, you know, themes and deeper stories. Then there's actually an extra line in the script where after, you know, that partygoer says like, oh, what kind of spell did you put on her? Which is in the movie. Bear, before Nikki does her like laughing breakdown, actually responds to it saying like, I can be hard to resist sometimes, you know, kind of getting this ego to him almost. And then as Nikki's laughing, doing her laughing breakdown, she actually stands up in the script and then like looks at the ceiling and then sits down again. So already kind of erratic, but overall same kind of sentiment as the movie. Then after the Hansel and Gretel poem, which is basically word for word, there's some slightly different blocking, but basically everything that happens with Nikki and, you know, the Sarah on your left scene is the exact same. Then with her breaking free and trying to kill herself, it's a little bit different in the script. It's obviously very chaotic in the movie, but everyone in the script is kind of like nonchalant, low-key, like low cortisol. They don't really react that much. Like Ian just basically is like, what the hell's going on? And then like, I know Nikki in the movie does her so like, oh, I'm so sorry, but she's like really apologetic in the script. And actually, Bear's sitting there, similar to how he does in the movie. It's actually Nikki is the one that comes over to him and is like, we need to go. We need to go. Like, I'm acting out. I need to go. She's like aware and is saying, I need to go. We're looking bad right now. So it's very interesting. I like how they did in the movie better for sure. But yeah, Nikki essentially fully became like aware here and is the one that dragged Bear away. So a little bit different. Then on during the drive to the hospital with you know, Bear and Nikki, instead of Nikki just being completely on him and like rubbing her head on him and stuff, we actually see her apparently like swap back and forth between real Nikki and fake Nick or wish Nikki, like really quickly, kind of going manic, and then all of a sudden like all in love with him, and then manic again, and then it's very like, apparently there's multiple moments where she kind of switches back and forth in the script. The hospital scene is the exact same. After the hospital scene, there's a quick little scene where after they get out of the car, when they arrive to Bear's house, they actually walk in kind of reluctantly holding hands. The dinner scene, the essentially like breakup scene, basically in the script starts off exactly the same as it does in the movie. There's the whole, I know Sarah likes you and all that stuff, and her saying, I can be Nikki, I can't be Nikki, all that is the exact same.
There's also a couple lines in the movie that actually aren't in the script, specifically when Nikki asks, oh, can you say you love me? Bear actually responds, this is all I ever wanted in the movie, but in the script that does not happen. And then Nikki also does not say in the script, oh, it's always been you. They kind of cut immediately to Bear recommending that she goes home.
There's a couple moments that are just like a little bit in there where when he says like, oh, you should go home for a night, he does remark, we just started dating. I'm not sure if that's in the movie. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it is interesting to note in the script. Then only after Nikki says the I love you in every reality line and Bear responds, I love you, does the scene actually completely deviate. There is no backwards walking. There's no weird thing where she goes into the bedroom and starts like slapping shit around and screaming and stuff. That is all gone. That's completely different in the script. After the line, I love you too, in the script, she actually immediately kind of gets up and actually starts stripping, basically taking off nearly all of her clothes except I think the top half. And then she does go back into the same doorway, but she walks normally over there, back into the same doorway, and it just gets extremely sexual, saying like, rail my guts, like Hansel did to Gretel, you know, bringing up that poem again, or that story again, and just basically like begging him to fuck her. After she does that, she actually starts This this would have freaked me out so bad in the theater. She basically starts like introducing herself as normal. So she's like, "Oh no, it's okay. I'm normal. I'm normal." And then she goes like, "Hi, I'm normal. Hey, I'm normal." Basically like initially saying, "Oh yeah, I'm just normal," but then being like, "Oh hi, hello there. I'm normal." So Bear's freaking out kind of the same way he does in the movie, but the whole context is very different. And I think there's everyone kind of talking about like, "Oh, what does she say when she's doing that backwards walk and right after it?" Because she's saying throughout this in the script, like, "Rail me," I think it is that. It just is very distorted and hard to hear. So I'm pretty sure that is what she's saying in the movie. Also, during this, after the whole normal thing, she does say, like, Nikki wouldn't have changed for you. So getting, like, some anger and resentment. There's definitely the real Nikki fucking, like, poking out here, getting really pissed at him. She doesn't do the whole pump fake run at him, but she does say these really kind of like pointed, angry lines at him. Then at the end of this whole kind of like scene where she's, kind of going back and forth between really sexual and really aggressive, she actually straight up acknowledges, like, "Do you know what a one-wish willow is?" He says no, and then she says, "Well, thank you for showing me that I love you." So, completely cut line there. She's fully aware of the one-wish willow in the script. After calling the one-wish willow out, probably comes my least favorite part of the entire script. I'm so glad they cut this. It would have almost ruined the movie for me, because basically what happens is after this, as Bear's kind of on the ground freaking out, she actually takes his hand, like kind of like pulls his hand into the bedroom, and then they have sex again. So it's, oh my god, it's really disturbing. It's super disturbing in the script, but I'm so glad they cut this part out, because I think, like, obviously there's some sexual content in the movie, but, like, it's very pointed, and it very much keeps the blame on Bear. Like, this in no way in the movie is not, obviously, I'm not the first one to say this. Everyone's always like, actually, guys, did you know that Bear was the villain? I don't want to be that, but, like, it does make it clear that Bear is the villain in the movie, because every time that they have sex or anything happens without Nikki's full consent, it fully puts the blame on Bear. But in the script, her kind of like taking his hand and like basically forcing him into the bedroom, even though, yes, it still isn't real Nikki doing this. Obviously, it's wish Nikki doing this, and she really wants to love him, and one of the only ways she knows to love him is through physical contact. It still almost puts Bear in this victim spot where he's the one being sexually assaulted now, where he might not want this, but it's happening anyway. So I'm really glad they cut this. I don't know who made that decision, but I really like to shout them out specifically, because I really think it kind of keeps the movie pointed on Nikki being the true victim in all of this. Sarah texting Bear and Nikki begging for her death is the exact same in the script. The car scene and eventual Sarah death scene in the script is fairly similar. There is one moment where Sarah actually directly remarks that her and Nikki are not close at all anymore. Then there's some things changed and some things actually in the script that isn't in the movie, where Sarah has the letter, asks him if he wants to open it with her, and then before actually telling Bear about Nikki and Ian and their history, she actually just straight up admits that she likes Bear. She straight up tells him that. So a little bit different in the script there. It's obviously very clear in the movie that she likes him, so I'm glad that she didn't say it, but like, she just straight up says it in the script. And then in the script, instead of the entire like, "Oh, I was on your left" thing after telling Bear about Nikki and Ian, she actually gets killed in the middle of talking about Nikki and Ian. So it's a lot quicker in the script, and the build-up, that's the part of the reason why that scene is so terrifying. So I'm glad the direction they took it with in the movie. After Nikki kills Sarah, there's multiple things that Nikki says here that are almost even more aggressive than the things she says in the movie, where it's like, "This is your fault, this is all that." Obviously, she still says all of those things. However, before saying all those things, she actually tells him, "I'm sorry, my heart took a path that I never chose." So again, extremely aggressive and very pointed, and very, it's not even mean, because she deserves to say that because it's true, but definitely kind of like a stabbing, pain for sure. And then as she's kind of comforting Bear, she also says, like, don't worry, Sarah is fine. So again, also very out of touch with realities here. Kind of like how she is in the movie at this point. But yeah, she does remark that Sarah's actually completely okay in the script. So kind of weird. Then as she's telling Bear, like, hey, we need to hide the body, there's a couple cut lines and cut moments where basically Nikki's saying we need to hide the body, and Bear keeps shaking his head no, essentially. And then Nikki kind of like forcefully makes him shake his head yes, where she's like, no, you need to shake your head yes, you need to shake your head yes. And then she actually says a really mean thing about Sarah, where she basically goes like, yeah, we need to get this tiny gross body out of here. So kind of like the resentment coming back up for Sarah. Obviously real Nikki, despite what their fallout or whatever, probably would have never said that. So definitely a little bit of wish Nikki in there, but just an interesting line that they cut. The entire body removal scene scenes, montage, basically the same thing, just with some different timing. Bear opening Sarah's congratulations letter from Luther is the exact same, except that they changed how, like, him breaking down and reacting to it. Instead of being in a stationary car, it's while he's speeding down like a highway to get to the magic shop. While in the magic shop, there are a couple differences. The main two differences is when he walks in, there's no extra that says like dude, what the fuck? Like how it is in the movie. And then the second difference is there's actually some cut lines here by the man behind the counter that is actually said by Curry Parker during the phone call scene between the Tabby Cat customer service guy and Bear. The man behind the counter also never insinuates that there might be a way out of the wish by, mentioning the whole contradicting wish element of it. That is something that Bear comes up with completely on his own. The scene of Bear trying to make a wish in his car after this, and it failing, is moved later. Also, one of the funniest mistakes in the entire script, during the magic shop scene, they spelled balling wrong.
Do that in the cup? Oh! Shit! Ah!
After a short cut scene in the parking lot where Bear is actually walking out with 3 One-Wish Willows, we go back to Ian's house like how it is in the movie. The main difference here between the movie scene and the script scene is just how, like, Ian is nonchalant the entire movie. He, like, does not care this entire movie. Other than that, the scene basically plays out the exact same way, but I'm so glad how Cooper Tomlinson kind of, like, took this role, because in the script, he's kind of just like, oh, shit, really? Dang. Well, I mean, why don't you make a wish? Oh, dude, that sucks, bro. Like, he does not care. He doesn't care until the $1 billion thing happens, of course. When Bear comes back to his house, there's a small cutscene where as he's walking up to his house, he takes note of an empty driveway. This, like, kind of confuses me because, like, I know that, Nikki kept Sarah's body to, like, take a lot of her belongings and copy herself, like the tattoos and all that. But, like, how did she get back with Sarah's body if she didn't drive her car? I'm glad they didn't include it. It confuses me a little bit. During this scene, there is one kind of cut area that was actually included earlier, where it's actually here that Bear tries to make his wish and fails. After he tries to make this wish, Nikki actually overhears it and says, like, oh, don't worry, you need me to love you. So that's another cut line. During this very chaotic scene, there's one line that I think is not in the movie, but it's so chaotic, it's so hard to hear some of the lines that I might be missing it. But basically, as Bear sees Sarah, Nikki actually remarks that she needs to be here because she needs to see us. Before doing her iconic, like, why don't you love me scream, there's also an extra line where she asks, like, do you like me better now? As she's taking the drag of the cigarette. I think in the script it's a blunt, but in the movie it's a cigarette for sure. So
she actually does ask if Bear likes her better now in the movie too.
Then during this entire scene where Nikki's basically threatening Bear with the gun and everything, there's a lot of extra scenes or extra noises and mannerisms and words that Indy was adding in. Like there's not the entire stop as she's walking towards him. That's all completely movie original. Then the rest of the scene basically plays out exactly the same way, where Ian gets shot in the head, everything happens, and Bear screams I love you, gets vomited on. All that stuff is in the script. Except there's one thing that's in the movie that isn't in the script, and it's basically when she says we're going to be together forever. That's not in the script, and then he maybe shakes his head no. She takes it that like he shook his head no. I never saw him shook his head no. That's like, something that I can get into on the movie breakdown. But that entire thing is not in the script. In the script, all that happens is, I love you. Oh, I knew you did, all that stuff. And then he goes like, okay, let's go freshen up. And then the whole bathroom scene happens. And the bathroom scene is actually much longer and much more hectic in the movie than it is in the script. The whole banging on the door, like, that's happening in the script, but he only has to say, like, wait, just a second, like, twice. And then she essentially, like, immediately stops, unlike how it is in the movie where she's banging on it for, like 40 seconds straight. After she gives up, there are also no lines where Nikki's saying, like, oh, I've been thinking and I think we should break up. She goes completely silent after she leaves the bathroom doorway. In the script, there's, everything kind of takes place exactly how it does in the movie, except in the script, he actually accepts his fate. He doesn't try to do the entire, throwing the pills back up. And I do know that is a thing that Michael Johnston kind of added in because he felt like it was, it fit Bear's character, and I love that decision. It completely fits his character. So yeah, that part is not in the script. And then I'm sure, as many of you guys know, it's been in many interviews, but the ending was definitely a little bit different. Basically what happens at the end is the same thing kind of happens where Bear comes out, because of the One Wish Willow wish Nikki made, and kind of dies kind of in her arms. Except there's one thing that I haven't seen too many people highlight. It's that Bear actually has like a last words moment where he says, in this life and the next. Then only after that line does she pick up the gun and shoot herself. I would like to note that Indy Navarrete has said multiple times before that they actually shot it where like she snapped back into consciousness in the real Nikki and then decided to shoot herself. That's not exactly how it plays out in the script. In the script, it's just her, wish Nikki getting sad and killing herself over Bear dying. So a little bit different from how they might have initially shot it. Overall, when comparing the script to the movie, even though there are some very interesting tidbits and maybe some contextual things that kind of make the movie even better for me, I am overall very happy with the direction they took it. I'm really happy with 99% of the things that they either cut or added in. Specifically the entire middle section of the movie, where basically all of it is either completely changed or not even there, like the whole cat sandwich, the duct tape door, all that stuff. So I think all of these little things that they changed really enhanced the movie and really made the movie the breakout hit that it is right now. No matter how good the script is, I think what this kind of proves is no matter how good a script is, every kind of aspect of, filmmaking kind of has to be, put together and in their bag whenever they're making a movie, because obviously this is a great script, and it would have been a good movie if it was made exactly how the script was written, but I think like Michael and Indy and Cooper and Megan kind of putting all their spin on all these characters and kind of like, the prop team behind everything, just really building this out in like such a thought out and amazing way is really kind of what made this movie what it is. So I'd like to give a special shout out to obviously Curry Barker, but everyone that's on the crew, from the AC to the from the DP and the gaffers and the PAs, and just even Capstone, who just funded the project. I'd really like to give a shout out to all of those people, because literally nothing would have happened without them. I know that sounds like I'm a part of this right now. I think, this film is great, and more films really should be made like it, and I think we need to give props when it's due, and to everyone. Everyone here should get credit for the amazing work that they did. For the future, I would like to continue making film and TV breakdowns similar to this, maybe with more script breakdowns in the future, because I found this very interesting, especially since I've done some script writing myself.
I'd like to thank all of you guys for watching. Bye bye!